This guy found himself completely alone in the middle of the forest, totally cut off from any signal and without a shred of hope to ever get out. He had no choice, because in an instant the world split into countless multiverses under the control of a cold, heartless system. And now he is stuck here surrounded by packs of bloodthirsty beasts, just waiting for a chance to devour him. His only weapon is an old hatchet he grabbed for chopping firewood, but the MC has one trait that sets him apart from the rest. He is a Defier, a being gifted with supernatural power, capable of surviving where others drop dead in seconds. While others got safe zones and basic training, he was already tearing monsters apart, leveling up at an insane speed. But it all started very differently than you might think. He came to the forest with his friends for a regular picnic. Zachary had just finished setting up the camp, when one annoying buddy sent him to get more firewood. Zachary did not argue, grabbed the hatchet and headed deep into the woods. Alone again, he keeps chopping, trying to finish quickly and put some distance between himself and the camp. He decides they do not need much more wood for a single night, and starts thinking about heading back soon. Before he can return, a violent purple energy suddenly erupts around his foot and traps him in place. Zach realizes something is terribly wrong as the strange force engulfs him. The world tears open into a cosmic void filled with glowing portals, as if reality itself has been replaced. Dropped into that impossible space, Zach can only stare in shock and try to make sense of it. A system interface activates and welcomes him to the multiverse. The announcement is so absurd that Zach can barely process what he is hearing. As he wonders if he is hallucinating, the system finishes scanning Earth and notes that its magical energy is extremely low. It explains that Earth will be merged with other worlds, that terrain has been adjusted for the process, and that wildlife has been upgraded because the planet offered too little challenge. The system then confirms that Zach has been linked to this multiverse framework. Still unable to accept any of it, he bitterly jokes that Izzy's brownies must have been drugged. He calls out for Hannah and the others, but the empty void gives him no answer and only deepens his panic. The system begins a new phase, announcing an incursion and the spawning of a Herald. An error interrupts the process because the Herald is materializing in the same space as Zach, and the system declares that survival now depends on a roll. Zach fixates on that word, confused that his life could suddenly hinge on something so arbitrary. As he tries to understand what he is supposed to survive, a red presence starts forming directly behind him. A monstrous demonic herald fully emerges, towering over him with overwhelming killing intent. Zach turns and is hit by the reality of the creature now sharing his space. Its roar makes clear that this is not a test he can fight through by normal means. The system lays out the rules. The Herald Urkaz rolls from 1 to 100,000, Zach rolls from 1 to 100, and the lower result will be eradicated. Hearing those ranges, Zach immediately understands how grotesquely unfair the contest is. The true horror settles in when he realizes the loser will simply cease to exist. He protests the impossible odds, furious that the system calls this survival. Refusing to accept a rigged game, Zach tries to reject the roll outright. The system ignores his refusal and treats his words as authorization to proceed. A slot machine-like roll begins, turning his fate into a mechanical gamble. Zach lunges at the interface and desperately tries to cancel the process before it finishes. When the roll keeps spinning anyway, his panic turns into outright desperation. The system chimes to a stop, locking in the result before his pleas can change anything. Zachary forces himself to accept a 96 out of 100 chance, even though he already believes that still will not be enough to save him. The system confirms the protocol is active and begins the roll, but he dismisses the reassurance because the odds still feel meaningless against this enemy. Facing Urkaz directly, Zachary concludes that even near-perfect chances mean nothing against a monster this overwhelming. The roll continues spinning while the outcome remains undecided. As he waits, regret hits him hard because he may die without ever saying goodbye to his father. His thoughts turn to Mackenzie as well, and he condemns himself for failing as an older brother. He bitterly wonders how long it would take before anyone at camp even realized he was gone. The memory of the camp only sharpens what he stands to lose if this ends here. Urkaz declares its intent to destroy everything, making clear that Zachary's death would only be the beginning. As the roll keeps turning, Zachary rages that his life has been reduced to the result of a single throw of fate. Instead of surrendering to chance, he tightens his grip and rejects that helplessness. He decides the probability no longer matters to him. Zachary begs for one real opportunity to fight back on his own terms. The roll lands on 91. The system declares the result a success. Zachary can barely believe he actually won. Urkaz erupts in fury as the system confirms Zachary's survival and denies the monster any reroll. The protocol's power crashes down on Urkaz and begins tearing it apart. At the same time, violent energy whips around Zachary as the process overwhelms him too. The strain rips through his body, but he endures it long enough for the outcome to settle. The system announces the final result. Zachary Atwood continues to exist, and Urkaz is vanquished. With the threat erased, the system returns to normal functions and starts restoring Zachary to the world. That restoration comes with repeated level gains, as if the victory has triggered a massive reward. A beam of light marks his return in the forest near the campsite. Zachary rematerializes on the ground, battered and disoriented but alive. As consciousness returns, he struggles to understand what just happened. He assumes he blacked out and immediately thinks about getting back to camp, until he notices something is wrong with his body and surroundings. Looking up, he sees an unnatural sky and light that make the world feel altered. The sight leaves him wondering where he has ended up. A system notice explains that Earth has been merged with additional planets because of insufficient energy and space, confirming this is not a hallucination. Zachary tries to dismiss it as a dream, but the message and the transformed forest make that impossible. Still focused on survival, he starts moving and searches for the way back to camp. He hears movement ahead and becomes alert. He spots the campsite through the trees. Seeing the trailer, he realizes he did not wander far and hopes the others are still there. He rushes forward calling out, ready to warn them that something terrible has happened. His voice falters when he reaches the campfire and senses that something is very wrong. The overturned chair and spilled supplies show the camp was disrupted suddenly and violently. The scene stuns him as he tries to process what he is seeing. A monstrous creature crouched in the camp answers that question, revealing what attacked the others. When it turns toward him, Zachary recognizes it as the same kind of monster he saw before. The beast lunges at him immediately, forcing him into a desperate reaction. It closes the distance with lethal speed, ready to tear him apart. Zachary plants himself and grips his weapon instead of fleeing. He commits to a full-force counterattack. His swing cleaves through the charging monster with shocking power, carving it open in a single exchange. The follow-through sends blood across him, proving the hit was devastatingly real. The creature crashes into the ground destroyed, and Zachary is left stunned by how absurdly strong he has become. As the system boots up new functions and welcomes him to the multiverse, he realizes the creature from earlier was not an isolated nightmare, but the beginning of this new reality. That realization ties back to Yarkaz itself, revealing the monster as part of the larger world he has now been thrown into. A grim certainty settles in as he realizes the deadly game has truly begun. Waking bloodied in the forest, he understands this nightmare is reality. He calls for his missing companions, but a monstrous beast answers instead. Seeing no one else around, he decides survival means getting away immediately. The creature lunges with terrifying speed, forcing him to reassess the threat at once. Its attack tears into the ground behind him, proving one direct hit would be fatal. He studies it while retreating and realizes its weakness is poor turning once it commits to a charge. A sudden idea flashes through his fear. He commits to a desperate plan and bets everything on it working. He sprints to draw the monster into a straight pursuit. Shouting to keep its attention, he deliberately guides it where he wants it to go. The beast takes the bait and barrels after him exactly as intended. He pushes deeper through the trees, staying just ahead of death. Behind him, the monster locks onto the chase with murderous focus. It launches forward in a full-speed rush, unable to slow or turn cleanly. At the last moment, he braces a blood-slick hand against stone to pivot. He plants himself beside a rock outcrop and prepares for the creature to overcommit. His footing holds as the trap reaches its critical moment. Even so, the strain and terror nearly break his concentration. He notices his weapon hand trembling and mistakes it for fear of dying. Then he corrects himself and recognizes the feeling for what it really is. As the beast rushes past, his hesitation burns away. He tightens his grip, fueled not by fear but by rage. Instead of fleeing, he challenges the monster to finish him if it can. The creature answers with another violent charge. He slips aside by a hair, letting its momentum carry it past him. The failed rush sends the beast crashing forward and leaves it exposed. It skids through the clearing, too committed to recover in time. Pinned against the rocks by its own speed, it finally gives him an opening. He raises his cleaver with both hands and commits to the counterattack. His first heavy strike bites deep into the creature's back. The blow tears through flesh and armor like hide. Remembering everything he has already endured, he refuses to let this monster be the end of him. The beast thrashes and roars, but its resistance only feeds his assault. He explodes into a frenzy, declaring the creature beneath his fear. His blade hacks down again in a brutal, decisive arc. He keeps cutting until the body splits apart under repeated strikes. Standing over the ruined corpse, he receives a reward for the kill as the violence finally stops. Breathing hard atop the carcass, he is alive but barely holding together. The aftermath leaves the forest marked by blood and the cost of surviving. He staggers away, leaving a trail that shows how close he is to collapse. Each step is unsteady as blood loss starts to overtake him. His weapon finally slips from his grasp, showing his strength is nearly gone. Reaching the nearby vehicle, he weakly calls out for anyone inside and clings to the hope of escape. With his last strength, he grabs the door handle. He can barely form the thought that he just needs to keep moving. He manages to open the door, but collapses beside the vehicle before he can get in. As consciousness fades, his mind turns to home. The forest clearing grows distant and small, as if he is slipping away from the scene entirely. He lies on the ground barely conscious, suspended between survival and blacking out. He regains consciousness beneath a bright forest canopy, waking into confusion. A battered young man sits up in pain, clutching his head as he tries to understand what happened. Seeing blood on his hand jolts him into the realization that he was badly injured. He checks the time and discovers his phone says 8:47, trying to anchor himself in something normal. The number hits him hard, and panic replaces grogginess. He realizes he has been unconscious for 3 full days. Remembering the others from camp, he is shaken that no one came back for him during all that time. He forces himself to think practically, but the conclusion is grim. If they still have not returned, they probably never will. As he moves through the forest, confusion deepens because nothing about the situation makes sense. When he touches his body, he finds his wounds have somehow healed far beyond what should be possible. Breathless, he confronts the impossible truth that he should have died, yet he is still alive. His isolation becomes clearer when he realizes he has no phone service and no easy way to call for help. The dead car confirms he has no simple route out either. He drags himself onward with an improvised weapon, surviving on determination alone. What truly defines his situation is the monster he remembers encountering. He struggles to classify it, wondering if some kind of alien life has invaded Earth. That thought spirals into fear for his family, especially his father, if this nightmare extends beyond the forest. His worry widens to his little sister Kenzie, turning survival into a desperate need to get back to them. He hardens his resolve and decides he has to make it home no matter what. Driven by that decision, he climbs higher through the trees to get a better view. He keeps his weapon ready as he pushes upward, expecting danger at any moment. When he reaches a vantage point, what he sees stops him cold. Beyond the forest lies a vast expanse of water and a distant red beam rising near the mountains, making him fear there may be no home left to return to. He realizes the water stretches too far to see across and concludes he may be trapped on an island. The scale of the change leaves him furious at whatever force has transformed his world. He shouts his rage into the forest, cursing the unseen system behind all of this. His outburst is answered by a sudden electronic alert. Blue screens appear and reward him with multiple titles for killing a monster, surviving impossible odds, and defeating enemies far stronger than himself. More achievements pile on, confirming that his survival and that earlier battle are being measured like game progress. As the notifications continue, he can only stare at the absurdity of it. He begins to grasp that some kind of interface is now responding directly to him. The status screen identifies him as Zachary Atwood, level 16, and lists inflated attributes, titles, free stat points, and a new currency called Nexus Coins. Instead of dismissing it, Zachary recognizes the terrifying implication that reality may have turned into a game. He quickly notices that his high level and many stats seem to come largely from the titles he earned. The interface goes further by presenting active quests tied to leveling up, defeating incursion leaders, and defending an outpost. He connects the distant red beam to an incursion, but the idea of an outpost is still unclear to him. When the system announces he meets the requirements to create one, he interprets it as some kind of base. Looking down at the abandoned campsite and vehicles below, he realizes a secure place to claim would be far better than wandering the monster-filled forest. Accepting that logic, he tells the system to create the outpost. The system confirms the outpost has been established, but the result seems underwhelming at first. Before he can make sense of it, a voice challenges him from nearby and demands to know what he is doing. He whirls with his axe ready and finds a floating, glowing creature confronting him. Its presence unsettles him immediately because it is clearly intelligent, and not what he expected. He blurts out the obvious truth that it is not human, stumbling as the encounter throws him off balance. The creature coolly replies that he is not human either, and notes that they are both disappointed by what they see. The exchange breaks his footing, and he starts to fall from the tree. In the middle of the slip, something seizes him before he can drop. He realizes too late that he has been caught by a massive coiling appendage. Now suspended and trapped, Zachary is surrounded by thick serpentine coils while still clutching his axe. As the creature tightens its hold, he braces in panic, realizing that one mistake has dropped him straight into another deadly struggle. A young man fights for his life in the forest as a giant serpent coils around him and lunges to finish him. Even while being constricted, he accepts that surviving may require lowering his guard and taking dangerous chances. He commits fully to that gamble, deciding he will risk everything if that is what it takes to grow stronger. At the critical moment, he forces one arm free from the serpent's grip. He seizes the monster by the head, turning its attack into an opening. Refusing to die there, he smashes the serpent's skull with brutal force. The impact drives through the nearby tree, splintering the wood. Still wrapped in coils, he slams the creature harder against the trunk until it cracks. The collision tears through bark and sends both fighter and serpent crashing down. As he falls, he hardens his resolve around a grim truth. The system rewards hunters and killers, so weakness means death. Plunging toward the ground, he pushes himself to keep acting like a hunter instead of prey. Pinned against the tree and still entangled, he vows that he must become the strongest no matter the cost. Nearby, a floating one-eyed spirit watches and dryly reflects that this place never offered him much chance to begin with. The spirit criticizes his choice of a tree as an outpost, judging it an absurdly poor decision. It continues mocking him, claiming it has guided many races and civilizations and that choosing a treehouse is the stupidest idea it has seen. Its ridicule stops when it hears violent chopping from below. A bloody blade flashes, signaling that the fight has turned lethal. Looking down, the spirit sees the aftermath as the serpent is hacked apart in a spray of blood. The sight catches it off guard, forcing it to reassess him. The young man steadies himself, breathing hard after the kill. Standing amid severed coils and blood, he emerges as the sole survivor of the struggle. With his weapon still in hand, he remains ready, wounded but unbroken. The spirit admits its first judgment was wrong, and concedes that he may have some worth after all. He studies the strange being warily, unsure whether this new presence is another threat. The spirit introduces itself as Vetabarak, or Abby, and says it was sent to assist him with his outpost. He gives his name as Zack and, baffled by the creature, asks what this supposed assistance even means. Abby explains with irritation that it is his assigned assistant, and assumes he missed the pixie's tutorial. Zack reveals he never received any tutorial at all and has been abandoned in this forest since the world changed 3 days earlier. Abby starts to dismiss that claim, then realizes the implication is serious. When Zack confirms it has only been days, Abby is stunned because the integration should have happened far earlier from his perspective. Abby begins piecing together what that anomaly means. It concludes that Zack must be a Defier, while Zack has no idea what that term means. Abby explains that Zack's world has only just been integrated into the multiverse, despite being an ancient world with countless planets. That revelation makes clear that Zack's isolation and timing are wildly abnormal on a cosmic scale. Abby describes the usual process. Most people are moved to a tutorial world for a month to learn the system before returning home. It adds that some people have a deficiency that prevents them from naturally absorbing cosmic energy. Those mortals eventually die unless the system intervenes, but a rare few survive anyway and stand against what should have killed them. Back in the forest camp, Zack asks directly about these so-called Defiers. He presses the real question beneath it all, whether his fate is still death. Abby answers uncertainly that maybe not, because a Defier is someone who gains power far beyond what should be possible. It defines a Defier as a mortal the system expects to die, yet who keeps overcoming impossible threats and proving that judgment wrong. In Abby's view, Defiance is not just survival but forcing the system's own verdict to fail. Zack rejects the idea that nearly being killed by chance should count as some grand opportunity. Abby counters that in the multiverse, what matters is not fairness but whether someone can seize the opening they are given. It warns him that the system despises cowards. If he fails or gives up, the system will punish him rather than spare him. Zack realizes this means he is expected to complete the quests and keep killing the monsters around him. He bitterly recognizes that he was never really offered a choice at all. Abby confirms that he is now at the forefront, under the system's scrutiny, and must not disappoint it. The spirit's intensity leaves no doubt that Zack's survival now depends on embracing that brutal role. Abby urges him to finish the current quest in 1 month instead of 3, hinting that the difference matters. Before she can explain, the system violently cuts her off. She vanishes in a blink, leaving him calling after her in alarm. A system notice confirms that the outpost administrator was forcibly returned early. He is left stunned, realizing the interruption was no accident. The warning about 1 month immediately starts to weigh on him. Elsewhere, a formal gathering unfolds among demons while political tension simmers beneath the celebration. Ogre stands apart from the festivities, brooding over his drink instead of joining in. Aaliyah approaches and notes that he looks far from pleased. She reminds him this should be a day of triumph, but he questions what there is to celebrate. The answer is that his grandfather has just named him Incursion General, a coveted promotion others would envy. Nearby nobles and warriors embody the dangerous attention that now comes with that title. Ogres recognizes the honor for what it is, something rivals would gladly kill to seize. The new general watching from the hall only sharpens the sense that this appointment is a threat as much as a reward. Aaliyah assumes he will have to fight to keep his place and is disappointed when he hesitates. Ogres rejects that path, insisting open struggle is the game of fools who mistake chaos for control. But the man below is already changing into something monstrous, proving the danger is immediate. Violence erupts as the transformed demon crashes down, throwing the gathering into panic. As accusations fly over who caused it, no one moves quickly enough to help the fallen victim. His blood spreads across the floor, showing the cost of their hesitation. Ogres condemns these schemers as people who pull at dangerous threads until they choke on the consequences. Back in the forest, the world is calm again, with only a stream breaking the silence. A small blue insect-like creature drifts through the air above the water. At the stream, a demonic beast drinks greedily, unaware it is being approached. The predator remains relaxed in the quiet woods, focused only on the water. The blue creature flutters down toward its head. It lands right on the demon's snout, directly between its eyes. The tiny creature settles there as if marking the target. The demon jerks upright in irritation. It turns, finally sensing that something else is nearby. The protagonist is already behind it, waiting for the opening. He takes it in one brutal strike, splitting the demon down before it can react. The kill earns him the Demon Slayer title, a combat bonus against demons, 100 Nexus coins, and another level. By the riverbank, he lets out a grim sense of relief that progress is finally coming. He notes that this system does not heal him when he levels, so every fight still carries lasting cost. Reviewing his status at level 17, he sees he has 32 free stat points to assign. He considers saving them, but rejects that idea after realizing the last battle proved he can no longer afford to be naive. He decides to invest everything now into the attributes that will keep him alive in the near term. He empties all his free points at once, reasoning that there may not be any later to plan for. Above the forest, the red pillar in the distance remains as a constant reminder that time is running out. Lying back on the ground, he calculates that 25 more days remain before his first month is up and wonders if Abby's warning was truly possible. He replays her words and searches for the reason she pushed him so urgently. He concludes that the system punished her for revealing something it did not want him to know. That makes him suspect. Finishing the quests within a month grants a special reward. Watching the blue creatures skim over the water, he realizes his life is going to become much harder if that is true. Even so, he reminds himself that he has a chance others trapped in the tutorial do not. He steels himself with the thought that he cannot afford to waste that advantage. With his resolve set, he grabs his bloodied weapon and prepares to continue hunting. He decides the break is over and that it is time to get back to work. By nightfall, his isolated camp in the forest shows he is settling in for a long, relentless push forward. A hard-won meal over the fire underscores that he is finally surviving long enough to think beyond the next fight. Reviewing his status, he reflects that most of his titles come from being the first person in the world to achieve things. Those titles confirm he was the first to kill a monster and the first to solo an incursion general, giving him major stat bonuses. Another title proves he even killed an enemy 50 levels above himself, reinforcing how abnormal his growth has been. Even while eating, he takes grim satisfaction in how far sheer desperation has pushed him. By his campfire, he realizes his self-made outpost may not be unique and that other tutorial survivors could already be advancing too. A weak snake becoming powerful so quickly convinces him that others may also be evolving at an alarming pace. He imagines just how monstrous some creatures could become if left unchecked. That thought extends to people as well, and he accepts that unknown rivals may already be far stronger than he is. He also considers that some humans may have developed overwhelming physical power, making the race for survival even more dangerous. So he decides he needs the outpost shop to make him stronger or help him find his family. When he checks the costs, he sees that even basic needs consume Nexus coins, though his snake kill at least earned him some. While eating, he notices something in the shop interface that might change everything. He finds a teleporter option and immediately wonders if it could be his way off the island. Hope hits him so hard he can barely breathe. His thoughts race to the same desperate wish, if not straight to his family, maybe at least back to civilization. That hope collapses when he learns the teleporter costs 10 million Nexus coins. The price is so absurd that he can only compare it to an impossible mountain of demon dog kills. He quickly concludes he will never reach that amount through ordinary hunting alone. Then he notices the active quests and realizes the shop rewards for major objectives could be his real path forward, so he resolves to survive long enough to clear them. Even so, he knows he cannot hoard coins blindly the way he hoards stat points. He decides to spend what little he has on tools that will help him stay alive now. In the end, only two affordable options seem worth buying. The first is Eye of Discernment, a skill that can reveal basic information about creatures and give him an edge in killing them. He activates the skill and endures the painful strain of integrating it. The second option is an F-grade mother-daughter small-scale gathering array. The array costs 3,000 coins and is designed to absorb nearby Nexus energy and transfer it to a paired core. He learns it can gather energy continuously, even while he sleeps, making it invaluable for a non-cultivator trying to build strength over time. But passive growth is too slow for his situation, so he returns to active hunting. From that point on, he spends nearly all his time killing monsters. When he manages to ambush demon dogs from above, the fights are easy. With surprise on his side, he can crush them quickly and efficiently. When he loses that advantage, the battles become brutal close-quarter struggles. In those moments, victory is anything but easy. Still, every encounter teaches him more, including how to read fresh tracks and stalk his prey. He improves his axe work through constant repetition and hard-earned experience. He also learns how to block attacks and apply his new skill in combat. Using Eye of Discernment, he identifies the demon dogs as Bargus of the Ruin Men clan Rych Brea, turning unknown threats into targets he can study. To survive longer hunts, he starts hiding supply caches around the island in case he cannot make it back to camp. He keeps hunting relentlessly, dragging back the bodies of what he kills. He fights through exhaustion and pain without stopping. He bleeds for every gain he makes. Dozens, maybe hundreds, die by his hand, and although leveling slows, his overall power keeps rising. Eventually he becomes strong enough to hunt Bargus as the predator instead of the prey. Even after reaching level 23, he knows it still is not enough and that time is running out. With less than 5 days left in the month, his stats show real growth, but not the kind that makes him feel safe. Elsewhere, the story shifts to a formal office where another side of the coming incursion is being managed. A horned armored figure named Rydell arrives to report to Ogres. Ogres greets him coolly and asks for an update on the incursion preparations. Rydell answers with restrained irritation, implying Ogres already knows the situation from the reports, while still deferring to his authority. A demon noble tests his subordinate's ambition, arguing that a true second-in-command should be capable of leadership and inviting him into a more intimate discussion. The armored officer refuses to relax, and the exchange immediately turns tense as he studies his superior's condition. He bluntly suspects the general has been drinking, trying to gauge whether this meeting is serious or reckless. The horned general dismisses the concern with irritation, insisting there is little to do yet because their part in the coming incursion will not begin for weeks. The officer agrees a little too smoothly, revealing that he has come with his own agenda rather than simple concern. He pushes a document across the desk, steering the conversation toward official business and asking for a signature so the general can return to his wine. The general signs without resistance, approving the officer's cousin Kevin for Master of Scouts and showing how casually he dispenses authority. Pleased, the officer thanks him and promises the order will be carried out at once, already turning this favor into leverage. Left alone, the general drunkenly praises Rydell's reliability, unaware he has just helped strengthen someone else's position. Once the door closes, the private performance ends and the room falls silent. The general's drunken act gives way to calculation as he counts down the remaining weeks until he can finally escape the den of Barghest. Elsewhere in the forest, a wounded young man advances carefully along a trail, every step measured. He drops a hand to the ground to steady himself and read the terrain, keeping his movements controlled despite his injuries. Pushing through the brush, he continues stalking something ahead without revealing himself. He spots a monstrous beast on the path and realizes it has not noticed him yet, giving him a brief tactical advantage. Believing he still has the element of surprise, he readies his axe and prepares to strike from downwind. The creature suddenly lifts its head, its senses locking onto him despite his precautions. He is caught off guard, realizing too late that the monster detected him in a way he did not expect. Before he can react, the beast tears into another smaller creature, showing both its brutality and that he is dealing with a predator far beyond the others. The hunter freezes and watches from cover as the monster finishes feeding nearby. The huge beast devours the carcass savagely, confirming that it is stronger and more feral than the monsters he has faced before. It keeps scenting the air through the blood, still searching even while it eats. After crushing the remains underfoot, it shifts from feeding to hunting mode. The monster launches straight toward his position, having fully fixed on him. Its charge closes the distance so fast that escape becomes his only option. It lands ahead with overwhelming force, cutting off his path and proving its speed matches its size. He dives away in shock, realizing this is unlike any ordinary monster. As he flees, he identifies it as a Herald, far larger than the others and likely the true target he must kill. He decides he cannot win head-on and needs to get back to camp, where he can make a plan instead of dying in the forest. On the way, he notices firelight and abruptly halts at the sight of an unexpected campsite. From hiding, he sees a red demon speaking with a smaller winged demon by the fire, and the shock of hearing monsters converse changes the situation completely. He struggles to process it, realizing he may have stumbled into something far more organized than a random nest. Watching the pair interact intelligently, he concludes this demon is not a mindless beast at all. He wonders whether it was sent specifically to find him, or to report the location of his outpost to others. To learn more, he activates a scanning ability through his eye, hoping to identify what he is dealing with. The skin labels the red one as a demon named Swigil and the winged one as a demon named Imp, both aligned with Clan Arzazak, exposing them as organized enemy forces. The moment the scan completes, he realizes they sensed his ability, and that his cover is blown. The Imp immediately gathers purple energy overhead, launching a magical attack before he can retreat. He lunges in with his axe, trying to break through the spell by force rather than be pinned down. Even as he commits, he knows he is in trouble and braces for impact. His weapon collides with the purple blast in a violent burst, barely stopping it from overwhelming him. He twists aside under the exploding force, surviving the exchange, but not escaping cleanly. As the energy passes, he turns to reassess, searching for the next threat. A sudden warning hits him too late as another attack rushes in from above. The red demon dives at him, while purple fireballs close in, trapping him between physical and magical assault. The impact sends him crashing backward as the coordinated attack finally breaks through his defense. The demon clamps its jaws onto his axe, trying to disarm him and overpower him at close range. He kicks free and hurls the creature off, buying a moment of space while shouting in fury. Only then does he notice purple fire burning on his shoulder, and realizes the magic left something behind instead of simply exploding. Seeing the corrupted burn spread across the barely grazed wound, he understands the real danger is the lingering effect of the demon fire, not the initial hit. The bat-like demon reflects that the attack did more than hurt physically. It felt as if something scorched its very soul. At the same time, the red hound closes in with murderous intent, turning the fight into a 2-on-1 trap. Realizing he is outmatched by both the hound and the demon's hatchet, the young man accepts that surviving this will take more than luck. He decides that if he cannot overcome these odds, he was never worthy of the fortune that has kept him alive so far. With that resolve, he lunges straight at the hound instead of retreating. The demon tries to cut him off by hurling another wave of purple fire. He forces his way through the barrage, refusing to let the ranged attack stop his charge. The hound leaps to crush him head-on, expecting to overpower him in close combat. He turns the beast's momentum against it by catching hold of it midair and locking himself onto its body. Even as the hound tears into him, he commits fully to the grapple and endures the pain. He drives the monster into the ground with a brutal slam, shifting the fight in his favor. Before it can recover, he follows with a savage beating that keeps it pinned and helpless. The strain and blood loss push him to his limit, but he refuses to stop. He finishes the exchange with a crushing blow to the hound's head. The beast collapses under him, effectively taken out of the battle. Watching this, the demon grins as if it has been waiting for exactly this opening. A blast of purple power erupts into the young man from behind, and the sudden agony tears a scream out of him. As the energy floods his body, he realizes with bitter clarity that what kept saving him may really have been luck. The attack bores into his chest, threatening to kill him where he stands. In that instant, he remembers the system's numbers and concludes that chance alone cannot carry him forever. Yet instead of dying, the energy surges through him and begins to gather around his body. The hound's tail lashes toward him, trying to exploit his vulnerable state. He recognizes the force inside him as cosmic energy. He understands it as a fundamental power tied to the very structure of the multiverse. He recalls that he has possessed this energy since the first thing he ever killed, though he never truly grasped it. The gathering array taught him how to sense it, and the skill he gained taught him how to use it. What remained was his own responsibility, learning to control it. Now, under pressure, he finally forces that control into action as the power condenses at his chest. His eyes sharpen with sudden understanding as the energy answers his will. He catches the hound's tail and, still angry over his broken axe, turns the beast's own body into a weapon. The demon hesitates, startled that he is still standing and now radiating a different kind of power. Its confidence hardens into alarm as it senses the danger too late. Trying to recover the initiative, the demon unleashes a storm of purple fireballs. He plants his foot and channels the new power through his movement, preparing a sweeping counterattack. Using the hound like a flail, he whips it around in a widening arc charged with cosmic force. The spinning strike carries him above the incoming barrage and sends the hound hurtling straight toward the demon. The impact tears through flesh and blood as his improvised weapon connects with devastating force. For the first time, the demon's grin breaks as it realizes it may actually lose. The collision detonates in a massive explosion that ends the battle. By the final day of the month, the forest has gone quiet again. At a rocky pool nearby, something drops into the water with a soft splash. The aftermath drifts there in pieces, with the demon's body floating lifelessly among the rocks. A final splash and sinking fragments confirm that the monsters are dead and the fight is over. Later, the young man sits down to repair his damaged weapon, fitting a new blade onto the broken handle. When the work is done, he judges the makeshift axe good enough to keep going. He reflects that reaching level 25 and gaining a class first would have been safer, but Abby urged him to finish his monthly quests before then. He decides that delay is no longer an option and that he cannot afford to slow down now. Since the system rewards risk, he resolves to gamble on another dangerous hunt. Armed with his repaired axe and renewed confidence, he sets out to kill a second herald. Elsewhere, a clawed hand settles onto a surface, hinting that another ominous force is already stirring. Two demon commanders stand over a table in a tense planning session, preparing for a major operation. One of them remarks that the past month has been unusually busy, framing everything as the result of long preparation. Rydell agrees only partly, making it clear that the burden has not been shared equally. The other commander insists this is only the beginning, warning that once they pass through the portal they will be cut off from the rest of their clan and forced to rely on themselves. They look out over a massive army gathered beneath a violent purple portal, ready to invade through it. Among the assembled demons, anticipation builds as the coming incursion is treated as both dangerous and exhilarating. Elsewhere, Zack throws himself forward into combat, moving with desperate speed. A monstrous VUL lunges at him with overwhelming force, trying to crush him before he can react. Zack barely avoids the strike, tumbling across the ground instead of taking the blow head-on. He recovers instantly into a fighting stance, refusing to lose momentum. Breathing hard, he steadies himself and studies the monster for a way to survive. The threat becomes clear. He is facing a level 45 VUL, far stronger than anything he can overpower directly. His thoughts return to a quiet memory of fishing with his father by a forest lake. The lesson begins with a simple cast into the water, setting up a point about how humans hunt. His father explains that every animal has its own advantage, and that human strength lies elsewhere. When the line jerks, Zack reacts with excitement, seeing the lesson turn practical. The fish slips free almost immediately, showing that speed alone is not enough to secure prey. His father uses the failure to explain that fish are naturally hard to catch because their bodies are built for escape. He broadens the lesson, saying humans do not rely on natural weapons but on tools and methods. The real advantage, he says, is not being stronger or faster, but being able to think through a problem. As he baits the hook, he teaches Zack that humans succeed by figuring things out, and that intelligence is what makes them special. The memory resolves into the present. This fight is taking place 2 hours before the battle with the Herald. Back in the forest, Zack accepts his father's lesson and works quickly, grateful that he came prepared. He reveals a field of hidden spears arranged as a trap, giving himself a way to kill something he cannot beat fairly. The VUL charges in with a roar, forcing the trap to be sprung under pressure rather than at leisure. Zack admits to himself that he cannot win by raw strength because the creature is simply too large and powerful. The beast barrels after him at terrifying speed, confirming that a single mistake will mean death. So he commits to one rule: never let the monster land a hit. He drives an electrified spear into the VUL as it closes, turning timing into his weapon. The strike tears into the creature's body and sends energy coursing through the wound. The force carries through as the spear punches deeper, proving the trap can hurt it if placed perfectly. Zack explains his edge to himself. He can channel cosmic energy into specific parts of his body. He reinforces his arm with that energy, making it stronger and tougher so he can keep fighting under impossible strain. The wounded VUL only grows more vicious, snapping back with renewed aggression. Zack retreats and draws it onward, reminding himself that he is not a cultivator who can overwhelm enemies with endless power. More VULs converge through the forest, turning the fight into a deadly chase with no room for delay. He knows his reserves are limited, so every bit of cosmic energy he spends has to count. He slices past another attack with razor-thin precision, understanding that even a small error will kill him. One of the monsters lashes out in a wild upward strike, trying to catch him as he moves. In his mind, his father urges him not to panic and to stay focused. Zack plants his feet and channels energy downward, preparing a decisive move instead of continuing to flee. He releases that power into the ground, using controlled cosmic energy to trigger the trap at exactly the right moment. With the opening created, he commits fully to the kill and drives his spear down. The empowered strike pierces deep into the VUL, combining force, precision, and stored energy into a finishing blow. At the portal site, the invasion structure stabilizes and hums with power as troops wait below it. A new arrival steps forward, drawing immediate attention. Someone demands to know where Rydell is, expecting him to be present for the operation. A senior officer answers that Rydell has already gone ahead through the incursion portal. That report is formally delivered to the general, signaling that the chain of command is now reacting to Rydell's independent move. The general faces his armored subordinates as the realization settles in that Rydell has entered the battlefield before the rest. A horned commander leads armed followers forward and blocks anyone from pursuing a man they want kept out of reach. Their leader shows cold confidence, already certain he controls the situation. Elsewhere on the island, a red beam still marks the catastrophe that changed everything. A battered human keeps sprinting through the forest, forcing his ruined body onward. He realizes he has pushed himself too far and is close to breaking. The cosmic energy empowering him is tearing his body apart faster than he can endure it. Even with a monster closing in, he refuses to stop because his goal is almost within reach. He spots the trap he prepared ahead and commits to reaching it before the beast catches him. The pursuing creature charges straight into the ambush without noticing. He keeps just enough distance to lure it exactly where he wants it. At the last instant, he braces himself and waits to see if the plan will hold. Hidden spikes lie in the brush directly in the monster's path. The beast lunges for him anyway, nearly taking him before the trap springs. He collapses from strain the moment the setup is triggered. A burst of force erupts from the ground beneath the charging monster. The blast launches the creature upward and away from him. The wounded beast is still alive, enraged rather than finished. It crashes back down hard, trying to recover its footing. Its eye locks onto him with murderous focus. He struggles upright and anxiously wonders whether the trap actually succeeded. A moment later, the answer comes as the monster is impaled and torn apart by the concealed stakes. Its body gives way with a final crack as the kill is secured. The creature's death releases energy that rushes toward the human. The system rewards him at once with a level up, quest completion, and the long-awaited chance to choose a class. For the first time since arriving, he lets himself believe he has truly done it. Relief breaks into laughter as the impossible finally feels real. He boasts to the system that he has killed yet another Herald and survived again. That celebration is cut short when a new hostile presence descends behind him. More red eyes open in the dark, revealing he is not alone at all. He instantly understands he celebrated too early. The forest answers the Herald's death with a whole pack of demonic beasts converging on him. Back at the portal site, the invader's stronghold looms under unstable purple energy. A wounded subordinate begs for mercy from the horned swordsman in charge. The swordsman kills him without hesitation. The body drops at his feet as another loose end is erased. Around him, other disguised operatives and dead soldiers show that he has been purging his own side. One subordinate complains about having to keep wearing false appearances. The leader, Ogrez, shuts her down and insists the disguises remain until he decides otherwise. Another fallen operative realizes too late that Ogrez has immobilized him completely. Aaliyah questions whether even she is included in his secrecy, and Ogrez confirms that she is especially being kept hidden. He explains that in the new world he wants no one to know how involved his people really are, because secrecy is power. A subordinate warns that once the portal closes they will lose the protection of Ogrez's grandfather and be isolated. The warning lands, but Ogrez remains unmoved. He lets the restrained subordinate fall aside, accepting the risk of being cut off. Ogrez decides the danger is worth it, and commits to his own path. He declares he is done with his treacherous clan, and no longer sees the new planet as more dangerous than home. With that decision made, he turns his attention to his next move. His true goal is revealed to be meeting the locals of this world directly. Meanwhile, the human races through the forest as beasts close from every side. He realizes the island is swarming and that escape by speed alone is impossible. The pack keeps gaining, forcing him to think while running. He curses Abby for never mentioning that killing a herald would summon nearly every beast on the island. His situation worsens as he feels his cosmic energy nearly exhausted after the herald fight. He knows he cannot outrun the entire horde in this condition. If they catch him now, he will be torn apart. A larger beast leaps in for the kill from behind. He whips his axe around in a desperate counterattack. The strike kills one pursuer and buys him a few more steps. He notices the kill restores a tiny amount of cosmic energy. That small refill gives him a new idea. If he keeps killing while spending carefully, he might sustain himself. So instead of fleeing blindly, he starts using the pursuing beasts as fuel. He decides he does not need to outrun the horde at all. He pivots and turns back into the pack. The beasts rush him, expecting an easy kill. He meets them head-on with a sweeping strike that cuts through the lead attacker. He commits fully to the brutal solution of killing every beast in his way. Far away, the red pillar over the demon outpost still burns as a sign of the invasion. Inside the outpost, Ulgra's absence leaves command to another officer who takes control without hesitation. He orders Kevrin to send scouting parties and identify whatever killed Herald Uarkaz. Kevrin reports that the scouts are already moving. The commander shifts to planning their outpost expansion until an urgent report interrupts him. The room wonders whether Ulgraz has finally returned through the portal. Instead, armed figures enter under rising tension. Ulgraz appears in person, flanked by loyal followers and carrying himself like the true authority. He surveys the room calmly, already in control before anyone speaks. The acting commander realizes too late that his position was never secure. Back in the forest, the human staggers onward after the slaughter, bleeding heavily and barely able to stand. His wounds and ruined weapon show how close he came to dying even while winning. He focuses on one last objective before collapsing, reaching a hidden supply cache. He limps past the corpses of the beasts he killed and heads for the tree where he hid it. He spots the right tree and forces himself the final distance. With shaking hands, he grabs the branch that marks the hiding place. He drags himself up despite exhaustion. At the top, he reaches the stash and finally gets off his feet. The moment he stops moving, the accumulated pain nearly knocks him out. Time passes, and the forest grows quiet again. A small bird's chirping wakes him from his exhausted stupor. He realizes more than a month has passed since the world changed, and life has continued in spite of everything. But he corrects himself bitterly, knowing his old world effectively ended the day the system arrived. He rewraps his injuries and prepares to move again. The bird flies off as he finishes gathering himself. He reflects that his healing is extraordinary, though he is still far from fully recovered. Even so, he decides to start the long trip home, planning to choose his class once he gets there. A sudden sound underfoot warns him that someone else is nearby. He freezes, instantly alert. A red-haired horned scout appears, and the human realizes a demon has found him. The demon passes close by while the human hides in the brush and watches. The sight confirms his fear that the invaders are already searching the forest. The scout studies blood on the ground and speaks in the demon tongue while tracking the trail. He calls out to Ulgraz, reporting what he has found and trying to relay the trail's direction. The human attacks before the message can be completed. He kills the scout and immediately claims the demon's better axe for himself. Rather than leave the body, he carries it away for another purpose. By nightfall, the corpse is bound upright in a clearing like bait. He splashes water over the dead demon to make the setup look fresh and recent. When the scout's allies call for him, no answer comes back. One of them approaches the bait cautiously, weapon ready. The human reveals himself at close range and greets the newcomer with deliberate calm. When the demon reacts to his speech, the human confirms that they can understand each other. He demands to know how many demons are invading his world, while the system identifies the captive as Azan of Clan Ezrazak. Azan refuses to answer and lashes out instead. Bound in place, the demon gathers red energy around himself. He chooses self-destruction over interrogation and tries to take the human with him. The human realizes the danger a split second too late. The demon detonates in a violent blast of fire and force. The explosion tears up the clearing and destroys the trap. Thrown back but alive, the human understands the demon deliberately absorbed energy just to explode. That means his attempt to extract information has failed completely. He curses the setback and accepts that these demons will be far harder to deal with than beasts. He retreats upward into the trees again to avoid being found after the blast. Hours later, when no one comes to investigate, he concludes he is safe for the moment. He climbs down and returns to the scorched clearing. Looking over the crater, he regrets losing a potentially useful prisoner. He also regrets that the demon's gear was destroyed, because proper equipment would have helped him greatly. Remembering the demon's self-destruction, he studies the lingering red energy and the danger it represents. He replays the blast in his mind and understands how completely it ruined his chance at answers. Still, he consoles himself with the fact that he at least upgraded to a sturdier new axe. He secures the weapon and starts thinking ahead again. Reaching level 25 remains a major victory, but he decides he needs one more precaution before choosing a class. He turns away from the crater with a new plan. Using the system, he purchases an F-grade small-scale illusion array. A storage case materializes in front of him. Inside are glowing stakes, and he figures out they must be planted around his camp to hide it. He begins setting the array pieces into the ground one by one. After placing the final stake, he prepares to test the device. He activates the illusion array through the system. The nearest stake comes to life with purple energy. Power spreads outward from point to point as the array links together. A translucent dome forms over his campsite and the nearby vehicles. The system confirms the illusion array is fully activated. The dome settles into place and blends with the forest around it. He is impressed to discover that everything inside is camouflaged as if the camp no longer exists. Satisfied, he hopes this will stop demons from stumbling onto him again and buys him time to stay ahead of smarter enemies. With his camp hidden at last, he returns to the reward he has been waiting for since level 25. The system offers class selection now that the requirement is complete. He accepts immediately, eager to finally advance. Instead, the system throws up a new paywall and demands a Nexus node before class selection can proceed. He explodes in frustration at the system's greed, realizing the coins he saved from farming and killing the Herald are about to vanish. With no real choice, he agrees to buy the node and can only hope the purchase will not expose his location. The system takes his coins and summons a glowing Nexus node into the clearing, opening the next stage of his progression. A wandering survivor discovers a glowing crystal and a pedestal that appears to be a system interface. Testing it with his axe triggers the device instead of damaging it. A blue screen materializes before him, confirming the pedestal is active. The system presents him with 5 available class choices. Realizing this is the opportunity he has been waiting for, he eagerly focuses on the selection. Fighter offers a basic melee path with room to grow, but nothing exceptional. Acolyte promises elemental magic, making it another common but flexible option. Marine is stronger at sea, which immediately makes it too situational for him. Demon Hunter looks powerful, but its specialization against demons makes him wary of being too narrow. Hatchetman stands out as a rare class built around relentless forest combat and axe mastery. He notes that all the options begin at the lowest rank, so the real difference lies in future potential. Because every class can be upgraded, he treats the choice as a long-term gamble on what will become strongest later. He quickly rules out Warrior and Acolyte, unwilling to settle for common paths when rarer ones are available. He also rejects Demon Hunter, deciding that power tied too closely to one enemy type could become a burden. That reasoning hardens as he imagines needing to fight all kinds of threats, not just demons. He refuses to be trapped in a role that only shines in limited circumstances. Marine falls next, since he has no intention of restricting himself to naval warfare. With the weaker fits discarded, only one real option remains. He concludes that the system rewards boldness, and that a class built for dangerous forests suits a life of constant risk. Even the possibility of being limited to axes feels like an advantage rather than a drawback. Having made up his mind, he grips the crystal to seal the choice. He names Hatchetman, and the system accepts the selection. The class locks in, and power surges violently through his body. The system announces extraordinary rewards. He is the first in the world to obtain a class, the first to be attacked by a class-based area, and the first to gain a class at all, granting massive bonus stats and rare titles. Lightning-like energy tears across him as the transformation forces his body to adapt. The empowerment continues, remaking him under the strain of the system's rewards. By the end of it, the class has fully taken hold. His strength, dexterity, endurance, vitality, intelligence, and wisdom all rise at once. He collapses to the ground, exhausted by the overwhelming upgrade. Catching his breath, he realizes he has become the first person on Earth to gain a class. Checking his status, he sees just how absurd the reward is. Hatchetman is rare, his level is already elevated, and his attributes have jumped dramatically, especially his strength. He steadies himself, absorbing what this new power means. A test of his body confirms the increase is real, with energy still crackling through his limbs. Satisfied, he turns from his status to the practical limits of his new class. The details reveal that Hatchetman boosts his physical stats and grants axe-related abilities, but most of those skills remain locked until higher levels. He accepts that nothing comes easily in this world and decides to start moving instead of waiting for more power to appear. Armed with his axe and new strength, he resolves to hunt the invaders and prove he is the true monster in this fight. The system updates his active mission: kill the 4 heralds and the incursion general within 3 months, with 2 of 5 objectives already accounted for. Elsewhere, the demonic side views the incursion as a rich opportunity and wonders why their commander has not yet taken charge. A horned demon noble lounges on a throne while others attend him, projecting confidence and contempt. He dismisses the opening wave of beasts as expendable scouts sent through the portal first. To him, sending weak creatures ahead is a cowardly but efficient way to test the island. Reports suggest the island offered so little resistance that the first arrivals likely wiped out any danger immediately. He assumes the local ruler and another powerful figure probably killed each other, leaving the island easy prey. From his perspective, the general's brilliance lies in preserving elite forces for the truly important campaigns on other worlds. Even so, he admits the heavens must have sacrificed thousands of slaves to open such a portal, making the invasion itself a major prize. He takes that as proof that their side has been favored with a valuable conquest. Fresh reports arrive with a more concrete reason for that confidence. Scouts have found a deep crystal vein in the island's mountains. The discovery reveals a cavern rich with luminous crystals embedded throughout the rock. And beyond the vein itself, the island also holds a hoard of treasure and resources substantial enough to enrich many fortunes. As the scouting party moves through the forest, their leader reflects that not everything valuable recovered in the field is ever returned to the clan. He makes it clear that some finds are quietly kept instead of being reported. When his subordinate Matisis addresses him, Kevin brusquely orders the others to stop lingering and catch up. Reaching a scenic overlook, Kevin asks Kayla if the place will do, and she agrees despite still adjusting to this planet's climate. The soldiers quickly set out a private table for their commander, turning the halt into an intimate meal. Kevin invites Kayla to sit and tries to lower the distance between them by asking her to drop the formalities. Kayla admits she is surprised he would make time for this when an incursion seems more important. He dismisses that concern and insists that being with her matters more. His attempt at charm is interrupted when the local insects start swarming the food, and he fumes that they will spoil the meal. His irritation deepens because he had to work hard just to persuade Kayla to join him. Annoyed, Kevin calls for Gormer to deal with the pests. When no answer comes, he realizes something is wrong. Kayla reacts first, jolting upright as danger suddenly closes in on them. A hidden native bursts from cover and cuts down one of the soldiers in a single violent strike. Kayla identifies the attacker as a native just as Kevin draws his weapon to engage. The ambusher snatches a fallen sword from the dying guard, arming himself mid-assault. He immediately turns that stolen blade back on the patrol, hurling himself into the next exchange. A spear thrust is broken apart in the clash, showing the native can overpower their weapons as well as their men. Kevin answers with a heavy overhead strike, trying to crush the attacker before he can build momentum. Their weapons collide in a burst of force, and the native holds his ground against Kevin's superior gear. As steel grinds, Kevin realizes this world is full of dangerous creatures after all. Instead of fear, that thought pleases him, because it means he can finally vent himself on something other than insects. Dark energy begins to crawl over his blade, and the native senses the threat as Kevin's confidence turns predatory. The pressure of that power bears down on the native, forcing him into a desperate struggle just to keep resisting. He surges through the strain and drives forward anyway, refusing to be pinned by Kevin's strength. The melee widens as another soldier joins in, and the native fights both angles at once. He lands a brutal hit on the second guard, dropping him with a decisive blow. A red shockwave tears across the ground from the fallen side of the fight, adding chaos to the battlefield. The blast catches the armored troops and throws them off balance. Using the opening, the native and Kevin crash back into close combat, each trying to finish the other first. The native slips behind Kevin so suddenly that even Kevin is caught off guard. He drives his weapon into Kevin's back, landing the first truly damaging strike on the commander. Black energy lashes out around Kevin as he staggers, while the native presses from behind. The native roars through his own exhaustion and pain, forcing the attack to completion. A spear-like strike shoots forward with lethal speed. An arrow slams into the native from behind, interrupting him and exposing that another enemy is still supporting Kevin. Breathing hard, the wounded native steadies himself instead of collapsing. Kevin immediately advances to execute him, openly declaring his intent to kill. At the last instant, the native notices the attack and reacts. He catches Kevin's descending blade with his own weapon, stopping a killing blow that should have ended him. Kevin is shaken that someone from a world only recently initiated can resist him this well. The native answers with raw physical force, lunging in and seizing control of the distance. He smashes a bandaged hand into Kevin's face, and Kevin is stunned by how strong he is. Without letting up, the native follows with another close-range strike that drives Kevin back. He then whips his weapon through in a fast horizontal cut, forcing Kevin to disengage. In that brief separation, the native's focus sharpens as he reads the fight clearly. Bloodied but composed, he sets his weapon for the next exchange with renewed confidence. Rather than overextend, he springs back into the trees to reset the distance and deny Kevin an easy counter. He wipes the blood from his mouth, measuring Kevin while regaining his breath. The clash pauses with both men facing each other across the clearing, the ambush having turned Kevin's private meal into a deadly duel. Wounded but still standing, the human faces another demon soldier in the forest and refuses to fall. His horned opponent grudgingly admits the human is remarkable despite being human. The demon reveals he has heard of people like this man before. He explains that such people are treated as worthless rejects, too weak to cultivate and discarded by the world. Yet he notes that those rejects keep struggling anyway, stubbornly surviving like pests. In his view, they fight so fiercely that even a cruel heaven is eventually forced to notice them. That judgment is aimed squarely at the battered human now standing before him. The man recalls the impossible odds he has already climbed through, as if measuring how far he has come. The demon finally names his kind, calling him a Defier. He mocks the human for having so much potential. Then he decides that potential has become a threat, because the human is now defying him personally. Red power surges through the demon as he commits to killing the Defier. The first murderous slash comes fast, but the human barely evades it. Instead of retreating, he slips inside the demon's reach and looks for an opening. He drives his axe into the demon's chest, only to discover the armor can redirect the blow. Realizing the attack failed, he braces for the counter. The demon blasts him away with a point-blank strike from the chest plate. The demon sees that the redirected attack left him completely unharmed. The human quickly understands that this armor will make the fight far more troublesome. The demon presses the advantage with another sweeping attack before the human can recover. But the human turns the battlefield itself against him, smashing debris into the demon's face. The demon is stunned that a human managed to catch him off guard. The impact breaks apart the rubble around him and interrupts his momentum. For the first time, confusion replaces his arrogance. The human lunges in to capitalize before the demon can reset. He follows with a brutal rising strike that hurls the demon through the air. One of the demon's soldiers panics and calls out to Keverin. The human crashes down nearby, still fighting through pain and exhaustion. Keverin, furious at being embarrassed, berates his subordinate and orders him not to lose focus. The human answers that lapse with another sudden attack aimed straight at Keverin. Keverin finally realizes the human is still dangerous even while half dead. He slams a beam of force into the ground to stop the charge and keep distance. The human is thrown aside, but Keverin immediately closes in to finish him. They collide in a savage close-quarter struggle, each trying to overpower the other. Keverin seizes the human by the face and pins him down, reclaiming control. He digs his fingers in hard enough to make the human's skull creak under the pressure. The human strains against the hold, refusing to break even as his face is crushed. Keverin orders Kayla to shoot him while he has the human trapped. Before the arrow can decide the fight, the human drives a hidden blade into Keverin's side. The stab lands deep, forcing Keverin to loosen his grip and bleed. The human tears free by ripping at Keverin's wounded face. Keverin recoils as black blood pours from the ruined eye. The human uses that opening to wrench himself out of the kill hold. His hand scrabbles desperately for his fallen weapon. Even injured and half-blinded, Keverin twists the blade in the human's body and taunts him for being too weak. The human finally gets a firm grip on his axe again. Keverin sneers that the Defier is nothing more than a gnat. The human answers by slashing through Keverin's neck, and the system confirms a level up. Keverin collapses while the human gasps over the corpse, having won by sheer brutality. But victory comes at a cost, and the human can barely rise with an arrow still lodged in his back. Kayla steps in with her bow drawn and warns him not to move. The human studies the angle and the distance, knowing he is one twitch away from death. He tries to act, but the pain from his wound cuts him off. He steadies himself and forces his mind clear despite the blood loss. Kayla repeats the threat and vows he will pay for killing Keverin. The human refuses to be intimidated and reaches for another option. Kayla's body lies nearby, already dead from the earlier chaos, leaving the human alone among the fallen. He starts looting the dead, deciding that if he survived this much, he may as well take useful gear. Among the spoils he finds a strange pouch that feels impossibly heavy for its size. When he opens it, he is startled by what it contains. The pouch unfolds into a storage space packed with supplies, furniture, food, and random belongings. The absurd contents make him wonder whether this demon came to conquer a world or enjoy a picnic. Then he notices several radiant crystals mixed in with the junk and senses they matter. The system identifies them as F-grade Nexus crystals that restore strength and help with leveling over time. Holding one, he feels a dense mass of cosmic energy concentrated in his hand. He reviews his active quests and sees again that he must kill the 4 heralds and the incursion general while protecting his outpost. Remembering that Nexus crystals are also quest rewards, he decides to absorb one even if it is only low grade. Half an hour later, he has stripped useful armor from the dead and made the enemy's equipment his own. He fastens the strange storage pouch to his belt as part of his new loadout. Satisfied with the upgrade, he thanks the dead for the gear they no longer need. He keeps the sword too, though he admits it is not really suited to him. Still, he decides the demon's allies should not be allowed to reclaim any of it. With the oversized blade and new armor in place, he looks far more dangerous than before. A system prompt confirms his progress, and he notes that his quests are moving forward. Yet one objective still refuses to advance, making him suspect he must conquer the incursion itself before the count will begin. He checks his class skills and sees that his axe mastery and related abilities are climbing, but the road ahead is still long. He counts the heralds he has already killed and realizes only the imp herald, one unknown herald, and the general remain. Looking over the battlefield, he admits he has no idea where the imp or the final herald might be. So for now he chooses the only target he can identify with certainty, the incursion general. He fixes his thoughts on the general and starts moving. From concealment he watches the demon outpost and decides to make the invaders feel what invasion is like. Inside the outpost, demon soldiers panic as a massacre unfolds outside their gate. They do not even know what is attacking them, only that they must run. The slaughter continues in the dark approach to the gate. When a patrol reaches the entrance, they halt in confusion at the silence and blood. Their leader can only ask what happened here. The answer is a road littered with demon corpses, severed limbs, and black blood, proof that someone has been hunting them relentlessly. Elsewhere, the human keeps moving through the forest while his axe mastery count steadily rises. He knows he cannot simply storm the general's fortress head-on. Between the defenses and the alert guards, a direct assault or stealthy infiltration would both end in disaster. There are too many demons on the island to thin them out one by one in any reasonable time. But he notices many of them regularly travel between the outpost and a cave in the mountain, suggesting another lead. He suspects the demons are building something larger than a mere camp, and that the cave may be part of it. That realization makes him question what the invaders are truly doing here and whether the system created them only as obstacles. Watching them laugh, joke, and play games convinces him they are not empty constructs but living beings. For a moment he wonders whether they are trapped in this conflict just as he is. Then he rejects the hesitation before it can weaken him. Whatever their motives, he decides they are invaders on his island and enemies in his home. He hardens his resolve, reminding himself that he still has to find his family and become the Defier Abby believed he could be. If killing demons is the price of reaching that goal, he accepts it. He resolves to hunt down the remaining 2 heralds before facing the general. Only after that will he return for the final confrontation. But finding those heralds proves far harder than deciding to kill them. He searches the island relentlessly, cutting down every enemy he meets while his mastery keeps climbing. He ranges from the island's outer cliffs and surf-beaten rocks inward, leaving corpses behind him. He checks even the smallest dead-end caves, but still finds no herald. The failure only convinces him that the missing targets must be hidden somewhere unusual. At last he reaches a high vantage point and looks over the island with fresh perspective. The answer hits him all at once. He realizes he had been searching the wrong places entirely. A sudden presence interrupts the thought before he can act on it. A stone-skinned beast crouches above him in the mountains, watching like a sentry. The human greets it calmly, already suspecting he has finally found what he was missing. Using Eye of Discernment, he identifies the creature as a stone monkey aligned with Clan Azrazak. That confirms the truth for him. The last heralds are an imp and a monkey. The stone monkey answers with a roar and attacks immediately. More stone monkeys pour down the cliff after it, turning the mountainside into an avalanche of enemies. The human meets the charge head-on with his axe. His blade carves through the first wave as the beasts crash around him. Each kill pushes his axe mastery closer to completion and rewards him with more system gains. He concludes these stone monkeys stay within their own territory, which is why he had never encountered them before. Then another attack comes before he can finish the thought. He realizes there are far more stone monkeys here than he first assumed. An entire swarm descends on him from every direction. Instead of panicking, he welcomes the challenge and prepares to test himself against them. As the horde falls, he reflects that ever since the system arrived, battle has become the language through which he understands reality. He keeps fighting, cutting through beast after beast without pause. At first he did not understand what any of this meant, but the rhythm of combat has been teaching him. Questions about his lost family and ruined world still haunt him even as he swings. Yet the more he thinks and fights, the more a pattern begins to emerge. With every enemy felled by his axe, that pattern becomes clearer. He realizes understanding is coming through action, and his mastery count races toward completion. As he tears through the horde, he feels the structure of the multiverse itself starting to make sense. To him, the endless flood of enemies becomes a forest waiting to be cut down. When axe mastery finally reaches its threshold, he embraces the revelation that he is the one meant to do the cutting. That breakthrough hurls his mind into a radiant vision of a vast celestial city, and he wonders where he has been taken. He senses something familiar in the vision and turns toward it. Before him stands an immense heavenly army of winged beings and towering warriors. Among them are figures of overwhelming presence, enough to make the scene feel like a memory of divine war. A voice recognizes the magnitude of the power he has touched, and he realizes he is not alone in the vision. The source of that voice draws near. A bald warrior carrying an axe appears beside him, as if stepping out of the revelation itself. The stranger exhales, centering himself before demonstrating something beyond ordinary combat. He raises his axe and gathers violent purple energy around his body. Then he unleashes that power in a single transcendent motion. The strike tears across the battlefield with catastrophic force, splitting through armies and the very landscape. Watching it, the human is overwhelmed as the energy seems to pass through him as well. The vision shows the attack continuing endlessly, as if one swing can erase legions. The scene culminates in a world-shaking impact that leaves only ruin and crackling power behind. Back in the mountains, the human comes to with purple energy still dancing around his axe, stunned by whatever new power he has just awakened. Resting beneath a tree after fighting stone creatures, the young hatchetman receives a system notice that he has formed a Tao seed tied to heaviness. He recognizes the word Tao from myth and religion, but realizes this is no metaphor and that something tangible has awakened in him. The system confirms an early seed of heaviness and immediately boosts his strength and endurance. Testing the idea with his weapon, he accepts that even if he cannot fully explain it yet, the power is real. As he grips the hatchet, understanding comes instinctively, as if he has touched a deeper law behind force itself. He recalls the bald warrior whose strikes seemed to carry the weight of fundamental truth, and begins to grasp what made those blows so overwhelming. He realizes his earlier assumptions were wrong, because those attacks were not just strong swings but force infused with true heaviness. Trying to imitate that principle, he focuses on making the weight behind the motion flow directly into his attack. He channels the new insight into a practice swing, driving the hatchet with far more force than before. The blow tears through the rocky enemy remains and splits the ground, proving the seed has transformed his offense. Breathing hard, he measures the result, and knows that despite this breakthrough, he still has not reached the level of the man who inspired it. He admits that the bald fighter had mastered something beyond simple heaviness, leaving more depth in that style than he can yet comprehend. Even so, seeing that gap only sharpens his ambition to reach that kind of strength himself. The memory of the bald warrior becomes a benchmark, and he openly wonders whether he can ever attain such power. Another system message elevates him further, naming him a child of Tao for becoming only the third person in the world to attain enlightenment and create a Tao seed, with broad stat increases as reward. The word third catches his attention, because it means others have already reached this level before him. His thoughts jump to the wider world, where other gifted survivors may already be advancing while he remains stranded on the island. He imagines the tutorial ending soon and worries about how many true prodigies are preparing for cultivation beyond this place. He also pictures humanity rebuilding and fighting back elsewhere, while he has been forced to wage his own war in isolation. For the first time since everything began, he feels genuinely outpaced and understands that he has been beaten to an important milestone. Checking his status, he sees the gains clearly. His class remains Hatchetman, his Tao is now Seed of Heaviness, and his physical stats have climbed sharply. Rather than sulk, he turns that frustration into resolve, deciding he must push harder if he wants a place in whatever new order emerges. Then he notices something he had overlooked in the middle of all his recent progress. With a small, satisfied smile, he realizes another objective is almost finished. The system shows his first quest nearly complete, with only a few more chops needed before he can claim the reward. Elsewhere, the scene shifts to a fortified hall where a report is being delivered to a demonic court. A Horn noble reacts in disbelief when he hears news involving Keverin. A subordinate confirms that Keverin is dead. The report explains that the same group responsible for killing Vol and Yarkaz likely killed him as well, and that the attackers appear to be only a small force of elite local warriors. Instead of mourning, the Horn noble is delighted, seeing Keverin's death as a convenient solution to his own problems. He quickly masks his pleasure behind a cough and dismisses the loss, deciding it only means one less rival is watching him. He orders troops sent to inspect Cindermane and Agugo, while acknowledging that the natives are stronger than expected. Privately, he decides the best outcome is to let his enemies and the locals destroy each other so he can benefit from the chaos. When his armored companion points out how obvious his scheming grin is, he brusquely tells him to be quiet. Back on the island, the Hatchetman stands and returns to the fallen tree he has been cutting. With the counter at 9,999, he wipes his face and prepares himself for the final strike. He commits to one last chop. As the hatchet bites in, power surges through him and the quest counter hits 10,000, triggering a sudden transformation. Lightning-like energy wraps around his body and weapon as the completion unleashes a violent burst of force. The shock throws him away from the tree and toward the sheer mountainside. Instinctively, he reaches out for the cliff to stop himself. He catches the rock face and clings there, suspended high above the valley. Looking down, he sees the commotion below and realizes the blast has drawn attention. A voice from beneath calls out, and the stone monsters turn toward his position. A whole pack of lava-veined rock beasts charges in, converging on him at once. He steadies himself instead of panicking, lowering his head as he gathers focus. Tightening his grip on the hatchet, he prepares a charged counterattack. The monsters leap upward in a swarm, trying to overwhelm him before he can recover. He meets their rush with a fierce upward swing, driving his empowered weapon into the attack. With calm certainty, he releases the technique as a single decisive chop. A lightning-charged blade tore through the mountain air as the hunt pressed into the peaks. The warrior drove his attack downward with explosive force, cutting through stone and power alike. He burst through the assault and descended in a streak of energy, overwhelming another enemy in passing. Clinging to the cliffs, he reflected that the mountains had confirmed his suspicion. He had been certain the answer lay higher up. The farther he climbed into the ring of peaks, the denser the cosmic energy became. That same elevation had strengthened the stone monkeys, who now guarded the cliffs in force. To him, they felt less like mindless beasts and more like crude demons. They organized themselves into packs, and each pack followed a clear hierarchy. At the center of that order stood a larger, stronger monkey that ruled the rest. He kept killing them as he moved, but none of those leaders proved to be the one he sought. So he spent days scaling peak after peak around the mountain ring, refusing to stop. By sunset, the search had yielded nothing, and another herald still had not appeared. That changed when he finally sensed a presence that did not belong among the heights. Realizing the herald was not above him after all, he called out to it. He fixed on a lone tree far below, and understood the true destination was there. Without hesitation, he started down the slope. Mid-step, something made him pause and reassess. A sudden unease stopped him cold. The strange tree below looked wrong, as if the land around it had been altered. Seeing the corrupted scene clearly, he demanded to know what had happened there. Beneath the tree sat the answer, Cindermane, the level 58 stone monkey herald. The herald met him with a hostile, knowing stare. The warrior struck first, bringing his weapon straight down in an attempt to crush the herald before it could react. The impact drove the herald into the ground, but it held firm instead of breaking. He pushed harder, trying to force the blade through by sheer strength. The herald caught the weapon between its hands and stopped the attack outright. Then one of its eyes flared with power, signaling a sudden shift in the fight. Golden energy surged through its body as it activated a stronger state. That power ran into the weapon itself, and the warrior realized the clash had become a contest of force and skill. The herald blasted him backward and broke the deadlock with brute strength. As the warrior recovered, a spiraling wave of energy rose above him, showing the herald could now attack at range as well. Instead of panicking, he recognized this as the kind of herald he had been waiting for, one worthy of his recent growth. He judged that his strength had nearly tripled since his last major fight, and that he had also gained a Dao seed, a class, and new skills to bring into this battle. The herald, however, revealed that it had already taken his axe and judged his current weapon stronger than the one used by the largest herald. With that claim hanging between them, the warrior advanced from the tree line to settle the matter directly. The herald stepped forward too, no longer content to wait beneath the tree. The warrior dashed in first, trying to seize the initiative before the herald could unleash another technique. The herald answered by springing upward, preparing a crushing counterattack from above. Lightning gathered around its raised arm and leg as it committed to a devastating slam. Its strike smashed the ground and sent rock erupting upward in a violent shockwave. The warrior was forced into the air as jagged stone spikes burst up around him. He cut through the rising debris with a clean, glowing slash, turning the trap into an opening. Amid the shattered stone, he saw his chance and pressed in with confidence. The two were thrown apart across the blasted field, resetting the distance for an instant. He immediately crossed that gap with another high-speed charge, his blade carving a bright path toward the herald. The herald tried to answer with a direct thrust aimed at his center. He slipped inside the line of attack and drove his own strike into the herald at close range. The blow snapped the herald's head aside and broke its composure. He followed through with a brutal finishing cut that tore blood free and left the herald reeling. The corrupted tree is struck and bleeds dark sap, showing the fight has turned directly against the source of the threat. As the tree lashes out with its roots, the warrior keeps cutting through the monkey-like attackers while the trunk shields their leader from a clean attack. Blood spatters across the pale branches, confirming the tree is being damaged even as it continues to protect the herald behind it. Realizing the tree keeps intercepting him, the warrior changes course and rushes straight back into the melee. He closes the distance on the herald, forcing the enemy to react before the tree can fully block him again. A sudden insight hits him as he understands the tree is constantly placing itself between him and his real target. The herald smugly reveals the trap in that arrangement. The warrior does not need to be targeted directly if the enemy can simply force him to keep harming the tree he wants to protect. Even knowing that, the warrior commits to a direct strike and drives in at the herald. He brings his weapon down with enough force to break through the herald's defense. The herald is pleased, because the warrior's desperation to save the tree is making him burn through his own body to keep attacking. The herald catches the blade barehanded and admires the warrior's determination even while stopping the killing blow. The weapon bites into the herald's hand, but not deeply enough to end the fight. The warrior recognizes the herald's resolve as equal to his own and understands this enemy is willing to sacrifice everything too. The herald answers that challenge by lunging in at point-blank range. He slams a brutal headbutt into the warrior's face and breaks the momentum of the attack. The herald roars in triumph as he overwhelms him at close quarters. That roar echoes across the mountains, carrying farther than it should. The warrior immediately realizes the danger. The stone monkeys made the same cry, so this signal will draw the whole horde unless he ends things now. Before he can recover, another heavy blow crashes into him. He is sent tumbling away across the ground, losing his chance to finish the herald. Staggering back up, he curses how close he came and knows he may never get another chance to face this herald alone if he falls back now. But he also understands that returning to the fight in his current condition would be suicide. His fear is confirmed when the summoned stone beasts answer the cry and come charging in as the ground shakes beneath them. With the enemy force closing around him, frustration gives way to urgent retreat. The herald stands behind the advancing stone monsters, now fully backed by his army and no longer vulnerable. The warrior turns away, abandoning the duel before he is surrounded and killed. He throws himself downhill, already knowing he cannot cross the mountains in this state. His injuries make escape over open terrain impossible, so he searches for any other route. As the stone beasts thunder after him, he decides his only hope is to buy time by forcing them into a narrow passage. He spots a cave entrance hidden ahead in the forested rock and heads straight for it. Without slowing, he races toward the opening before the horde can cut him off. He skids hard on the stone but keeps his footing and pushes inside. The pursuing monsters pour after him, committing the chase into the tunnel. Knowing the plan is reckless, he prepares to gamble on the cave itself. He decides that if he wants to survive another day, he must collapse the passage with a much larger break than before. Despite his condition, he gathers himself for one more powerful strike. He unleashes the blow into the cave wall, detonating the rock with enough force to bring the tunnel down. The ceiling collapses onto the charging stone beasts, burying them under a flood of rubble. When the dust settles, he is left standing on the safe side of the cave-in, cut off from the horde. He drops to one knee in the dim tunnel, alive but trapped and exhausted. He admits that even the strongest he has ever been is still not enough, and now he is stuck in a cave while time keeps slipping away. Still, he takes one small advantage from the disaster. He now knows where one of the last two heralds is, so his next priority is finding another way out. He forces himself back up and reasons that this cavern may connect to the mines the demons were using. With no better option, he starts deeper into the mountain to test that theory. He commits fully to the choice and continues farther underground. As he walks, the tunnel begins to glow with strange blue light seeping through the rock. Touching the wall, he senses dense cosmic energy here, the same kind he felt on the mountain peaks. That resemblance leads him to suspect the fourth herald may be hidden somewhere inside these mountains. The idea fits what he has already learned, since he searched the rest of the island and found nothing. Then he senses a presence ahead and realizes he has finally found something important in the depths. A wounded hunter moves quietly through a glowing cavern, keeping to the shadows as he tracks something ahead. Seeing proof at last, he realizes his suspicion was right. An imp in the tunnels confirms that its herald must be somewhere deeper inside. The imp notices movement behind it and starts to turn, but the hunter stays hidden for a moment longer. Unaware of the danger, the imp slips into a crystal-filled chamber with greedy delight. It eagerly gathers the luminous stones, focused only on stealing more. The sight reveals a stash of nexus crystals hidden in the cave. The hunter is surprised monsters even value the crystals, but the discovery matters because the cache can lead him back to the source. Certain he can trace the trail upstream, he prepares to act. Before he can move, something else bursts into the chamber at high speed. A huge lizard-like beast snaps the imp in half, interrupting the hunter's plan with sudden violence. He drops the idea of dealing with the imp, and is caught off guard by the new threat. As the monster surges with dark energy, he realizes he is facing a far more dangerous creature. The beast's mangled jaws and relentless movement make clear it is still fully capable of killing. It launches itself forward in a direct charge. The hunter meets the rush head-on instead of retreating. With a single sweeping strike, he carves through the charging lizard and ends the fight instantly. He exhales in annoyance, treating the kill as a nuisance rather than a challenge. He takes one of the nexus crystals from the horde to preserve the trail. Knowing the imp is dead, he decides to reconstruct its path as best he can and continue the pursuit alone. He leaves the chamber and resumes his search through the tunnels. Following the route proves easier than expected because the creature left behind a foul stench. As he presses on, the smell intensifies, and he senses another sign growing stronger as well. He pauses when a metallic rhythm reaches him from deeper underground. The distant clanging echoes through the caverns, confirming activity ahead. He understands the demons are mining the crystal veins. The realization hardens into anger when he recognizes they are harvesting his nexus crystals. Then he hears nearby voices speaking in a demonic tongue, much closer than the mining sounds. He immediately readies his weapon, recognizing the danger is almost on top of him. With nowhere to hide in the narrow passage, he braces for contact as the voices approach. Footsteps enter the corridor. 3 horned miners come into view, carrying tools and talking casually as they walk. Their conversation reveals they live under a harsh female overseer who treats them like slaves and punishes them over small losses. One dismisses the danger of being overheard, convinced she is too far away to matter. Still complaining, he asks where they are being led while the group keeps moving through the cave. Their leader explains that a rich crystal vein was found nearby and boasts that they may finally be able to keep some for themselves. He notices his companions suddenly tense up and demands to know what is wrong. Their fear spikes, and he mocks them for being terrified of their mistress. Before he can finish, the hunter flashes in and cuts him down in one clean ambush. The remaining 2 freeze in shock as the attack lands. The hunter orders them to run, leaving one corpse behind as the survivors scatter in panic. He stares after them with cold focus, clearly intending to use their flight to reach someone more important. One of the fleeing demons slams a foot into the ground and triggers a burst of power. The impact erupts outward in a shockwave, likely meant as a signal or desperate defense. The other survivor turns with rising dread, realizing events are spiraling beyond control. The hunter catches up and cuts across the path of the red-haired demon, driving the pair further into panic. The remaining target realizes too late that escape is failing. As he tries to call out that they are almost safe and warn someone named Kyugo, the hunter's blade hacks into his shoulder and silences him. Wounded and cornered against the wall, the demon is left helpless and exposed. The hunter closes in from behind the rock, poised to finish him and press deeper toward the true enemy. A hidden attacker lunges at a native guard before the alarm can be raised. The assassin finishes the strike in one clean motion, dropping the target immediately. He lands in the cavern without losing momentum. Realizing how close the attempt was, he steadies himself and recovers his weapon. He concludes he eliminated the sentries before they could warn the others. Even so, he senses the danger was nearly greater than he expected. As he looks deeper into the cavern, that unease sharpens into alarm. A much larger force is gathered ahead around a ritual site crawling with demonic creatures and corrupted fire. The enemy recognizes him at once as one of the native elites, confirming he has walked into a far more serious confrontation. Lesser imps continue feeding the ritual with fuel and flame. At the center stands Kyugo, a level 44 herald, overseeing the cauldron and the spreading corruption. The intruder identifies Kyugo as the 4th herald and decides this is exactly the target he came for. Kyugo answers by unleashing a massive wave of purple fire to erase him from a distance. He dives through the blast zone instead of retreating, choosing aggression over safety. Using the chaos as cover, he closes the gap on the defenders. His first strike crashes into the horned shield bearer guarding Kyugo. The clash locks him against the shield wall while another enemy moves in from behind. He catches the ambush in time and instantly shifts his focus. He intercepts the red-haired attacker before the flank can land cleanly. Kyugo orders Zirez to kill him immediately, turning the skirmish into a coordinated execution attempt. He answers first, driving his blade through Zirez before the order can be carried out. Kyugo retaliates by hurling another torrent of corrupted flame across the battlefield. Seeing the fire surge toward him, he realizes he has no room to evade normally. He vaults upward over the collapsing melee to escape the sweep. The heat still catches him at the edge, forcing a painful near miss. As he lands, he judges the Herald's fire to be deadly at range but slower and less effective up close. He reasons that if Kyugo fights like weaker Heralds, closing in is his best chance. Kyugo keeps flooding the cavern with fire, trying to deny that approach entirely. The problem becomes clear. Getting close means surviving the flames first. He powers up and cuts through the lesser imps to carve himself a path forward. A blazing arc tears through the swarm and clears the immediate pressure around him. He sprints again, still searching for some opening against Kyugo's barrage. He realizes Kyugo is fighting with reckless self-destruction, as if willing to burn everything down, including himself, just to kill him. His attention shifts to the cauldron, and he suspects whatever is brewing there may explain the Herald's madness. Before he can act on that thought, Kyugo sends down another overwhelming column of fire. The blast slams into the cavern floor and threatens to consume the entire route ahead. Instead of stopping, he charges straight along the edge of the inferno. The fire surges again and seals off every obvious escape. Trapped, he admits there is no way out by ordinary means. Kyugo tightens the trap with a spiraling ring of flame, expecting the kill to be certain. Confident of victory, the Herald grins as the fire closes in. The vortex intensifies into a full burn meant to incinerate him completely. Kyugo is caught off guard when the expected death does not come. The warrior commits to a breakthrough, driving himself directly through the flames instead of away from them. He recalls the armor's former owner, and the breastplate's special power. That ability can block and redirect a single attack, and he gambles it will work on fire as well. The gamble succeeds, letting him turn the Herald's flames aside and survive the impossible charge. Wrapped in redirected energy, he rises above Kyugo and takes control of the fight for the first time. He brings his weapon down in a decisive vertical strike aimed straight through the Herald's position. When the attack ends, he remains standing amid the fading energy, badly scorched but alive after forcing his way through Kyugo's trap. The warrior is suddenly overwhelmed by the toxic air and coughs up blood as the cave's corruption starts tearing at him. He realizes the smoke itself is affecting his mind and weakening his focus. As the fumes pour from a black cauldron, he understands the poison is the true threat behind the chaos. Even so, he sees the Herald trying to flee deeper into the mountain and fears his target will escape. He refuses to let that happen and raises his weapon despite his condition. Forcing himself forward, he commits every bit of remaining power to one decisive strike. He unleashes the attack in a final bid to kill the Herald before it can get away. He drives after the fleeing demon, cutting off its escape with sheer momentum and fury. His charge closes the distance in an instant, leaving the Herald no room to evade. The blow cleaves through the winged demon and ends the chase. The Herald crashes apart in the corrupted cavern, and the kill triggers a level up. Barely able to breathe, he receives confirmation of his mission progress. 3 of the 4 Heralds are now dead, with the general still to be found within the time limit. But the victory changes nothing about the immediate danger, and he realizes he has to escape before the smoke finishes him. His battered body is already failing, with fresh wounds and poison wearing him down. He concludes the cauldron is the source of the fumes, and that leaving it intact could flood the whole mountain with poison. The dead Herald lies nearby, no longer a threat. Purple fire and green smoke continue to spread through the chamber, showing the corruption is still active. He turns toward the tunnel exit and starts forcing himself out through the haze. Each step gets harder as nausea and sickness overtake him. The poison surges through his body, pushing him to the brink. He finally collapses, unable to stay upright any longer. Face down on the stone, he can only groan and endure the aftermath. He grits through the pain, trying not to black out. With shaking arms, he drags himself back up just enough to keep moving. Then he violently vomits, confirming how badly the smoke has poisoned him. As he wipes his mouth, he wonders what the Herald had been brewing and why it made him this sick without even drinking it. He notices the cauldron is still intact and claims it as loot, though that does nothing to solve his immediate problem. Knowing someone could come investigate at any time, he pushes himself to leave the area as fast as he can. A lurking cave creature appears along the way, adding another threat to his retreat. He reaches the earlier corpse and is relieved no other demons have passed through this route. Desperate for relief, he grabs the dead man's water and drinks it down. The water steadies him enough to catch his breath, and he offers grim thanks to the corpse for the help. He reflects that his armor's ability to redirect an attack is the only reason he survived the Herald's assault. Checking the chest piece, he sees that power is drained and only slowly recharging, making it something he can rely on sparingly. To recover further, he pulls out a crystal and prepares to absorb its energy. The crystal restores him, and he decides to conserve the rest of his supply unless more enemies appear. With the nausea finally easing, he feels capable of moving again without collapsing. He opens his status screen to assess what the fight has earned him. His status shows him at level 34 with 3 free points, prompting him to consider how to spend them. But something immediately seems wrong, and his attention snaps to an unexpected limit. He discovers he cannot add more points to strength, even though it is the stat he wants to raise most. The restriction makes no sense to him, and he starts questioning whether he has hit some hidden cap. Remembering an opponent who was clearly far stronger than that number, he rejects the idea that 175 could be an absolute universal limit. He reasons instead that the cap may be tied to his current level. Then he considers that his race or class rank might also be restricting him, but both are still only F rank and he has no idea how to improve them. Frustrated, he decides not to waste his free points while the system is blocking him like this. He also notices luck cannot be raised directly either, and concludes that stat only increases through titles. Alone in the cave with corpses around him, he vents his disgust at the system that keeps limiting him. Elsewhere in the mine, workers continue their labor under tense, oppressive conditions. Among them, a terrified horned girl is warned to stop shaking because the overseers can smell fear, while she panics over failing to meet her quota. A horned woman arrives under guard, and the gathered prisoners are told to expect her inspection without concern. She advances through the mine with calm authority, making it clear she is in complete control of the place. With a cold, assessing stare, she singles out the workers as if judging their worth at a glance. The prisoners brace themselves as one of them steps forward carrying his collected haul. She begins reviewing the day's gathering, and the worker submits his bag to the warden. She weighs the pouch in her hands, already sensing whether it meets her expectations. When she opens it, the contents spill out as glowing blue Nexus crystals, confirming the mine's output. Satisfied with that result, she records it and immediately calls for the next prisoner. The next worker hesitates and tries to speak for himself before handing over his much smaller bag. She cuts off any excuse, reminding him that the clan's war effort depends on these crystals and that every delay steals time and profit from her. Closing in on him, she frames his failure as betrayal of the clan rather than simple weakness. She forces him to face her threat directly and makes sure he understands that traitors are not spared. Terrified, he throws himself down and begs for one more chance, swearing he will not fall short again. Instead of mercy, she orders that his punishment be made an example to discourage anyone else from failing her. One of her guards raises his sword to execute the cowering prisoner on the spot. Just before the blow falls, the guard senses something wrong and pauses. A hidden bald intruder is revealed high above the mine, watching the scene and preparing to strike. The alarm goes up as the warden and her men realize the mine is under attack. At the same time, a pack of salamanders surges into the area, throwing the site into chaos. The prisoners are urged to run and get moving while panic spreads through the cavern. The guards rush to intercept the beasts, cutting into the salamanders to keep them from overrunning the workers. From above, the intruder sees the confusion as an ideal opening. He identifies the warden as the one controlling the operation and decides that taking her down would cripple the demon's mining work. He also notices her crystal bag and realizes it likely contains a valuable cache worth stealing. Smirking, he decides to let the salamanders distract everyone while he goes after the real prize. Below, a guard commits to another strike against the monsters, unaware he is being targeted. A thrown rock smashes into him and disrupts his attack, proving the intruder has joined the fight. The bald raider steps out openly, delighted that this raid may make him rich. He launches himself down into the mine with weapon and magic ready. He lands amid the chaos, scattering attention as prisoners and guards alike recoil from the sudden arrival. The warden turns in shock, demanding to know who dared invade her mine. She immediately orders her forces to ignore the salamanders and kill the intruder first, summoning green magical tendrils to attack him. One of the guards tries to cut the raider down before he can press the advantage. The intruder reacts instantly, meeting the attack without losing his composure. He counters with a brutal sweeping strike that tears through the guard line. A guard is left maimed and screaming about his severed arm, exposing how far above them the intruder is. Furious at her men's failure, the warden takes the fight into her own hands and drives a storm of green tendrils at the raider. Her magic closes in from all directions, trying to bind and crush him before he can reach her. The intruder answers by channeling power through his weapon and charging straight through the trap. He bursts upward in a spiraling rush, shredding through the tendrils and forcing a direct clash. With momentum on his side, he swings a heavy glowing arc at the warden. Caught off guard, she scrambles to defend herself as the attack bears down on her. She raises a green barrier and catches the strike, stopping him just short of a clean hit. The intruder realizes her defense works like his armor ability, turning force away instead of simply enduring it. His attack crashes into the barrier and is thrown back, forcing him to absorb the danger of his own power. He quickly understands the problem. If he keeps pressing head-on, her shield will redirect his blows right back at him. Seeing his hesitation, the warden extends more tendrils along the ground to lock him in place. Pinned between her barrier and her binding magic, he admits he cannot block an incoming strike without being hit by his reflected attack. A surviving guard exploits the opening and drives a blade into the intruder from behind. The raider grits his teeth in pain as the ambush lands, leaving him trapped and wounded in the middle of enemy territory. A bald, bandaged fighter tears through the demon's vine trap with a lightning-charged rush while a nearby soldier desperately dodges the chaos. The vines cinch tighter around him, trying to crush and immobilize him before he can break through. Instead of yielding, he forces his way forward through the binding growth, sword still ready despite being nearly swallowed by it. The horned demon woman realizes they have caught the crystal thief and identifies him as one of the elite enemies who has been harassing their side. Confident in her advantage, she decides to keep him alive long enough to hand him over for interrogation. Her confidence falters when his body surges with power, and the vines around him begin to fail under the strain. She taunts him for resisting, convinced her trap has already made him harmless. He answers by exploding out of the restraint in a blinding burst of force. The sudden counterattack catches her off guard, and she realizes too late that he has already reached striking distance. His electrified blade crashes down on her before she can recover. He drives straight through her defenses with overwhelming momentum, turning her attempted capture into a close-range execution. Without slowing, he launches past her and bears down on another enemy soldier. He cuts that soldier down in passing, clearing the field around the demon woman with brutal efficiency. As he closes in again, she is shaken by the impossible speed and force of his advance. Watching him tear through attacks and bodies alike, she stops seeing him as a mere human and starts fearing him as something monstrous. She judges that his strength may rival a general's and understands that letting him survive would be a disaster. Resolving to kill him for Azrazak, she commits to a desperate all-out strike. She steels herself and pours everything into the attack. Their powers collide in a violent red and gold blast as she tries to end him in one decisive exchange. He recognizes the same dangerous phenomenon returning and immediately braces for another catastrophic detonation. The clash erupts into a massive explosion that tears through the cave. When the smoke clears, he survives amid the wreckage, battered and breathing hard, while the demon's body lies ruined nearby. He concludes that his disguise is blown now that demon workers have seen him, so stealth is no longer worth preserving. Accepting that he was never built for subtlety anyway, he decides to focus entirely on reaching the final Herald. Then he notices the fight was not a total loss. He searches the dead demon's clothing for anything valuable. What he finds is a large cache of crystals, and he immediately counts the haul as a major gain. He also realizes her enchanted dress somehow survived the blast, making it valuable in its own right. Recalling how the garment endured the explosion and even reflected attacks through her armor, he recognizes it as powerful protective equipment. He briefly hesitates over whether wearing a demon woman's dress is worth it, but survival wins the argument. He decides without further shame and pulls the dress on. Treating it as the difference between life and death, he commits fully to using the armor despite how absurd it looks. Once dressed and cloaked, he forces himself back up and plans to leave before more demons flood the cave, hoping the beasts outside have scattered. As he checks his status, a new blue system screen appears unexpectedly. The screen offers a reward called Lone Walker for walking 1,000 kilometers while touching the earth. He assumes it is an easy movement skill and initially thinks the requirement is trivial. That confidence vanishes when something else suddenly triggers in the system. A special dynamic quest activates. The quest reveals that a limited opening has appeared for an emergent glorious, and sees the fruit of ascension struggle centered on a supreme tree. He is struck by a vision of a strange, radiant fruit hanging from that otherworldly tree and realizes this is more than a simple notification. Though he does not understand the vision, he instantly decides the prize will be his. The vision expands to show the immense tree and the gathered beast-like contenders already staring up at the fruit. Elsewhere, a red pillar marks the event's location, and demons across the region realize a fruit of ascension has appeared and that the heavens are favoring them again. One horned demon receives the same notice and is immediately thrown into alarm. He recognizes the event as a direct threat to his plans and rages at the meddling monkey who keeps disrupting him. Seething in his chamber, he realizes the beast was sent to keep his search parties away from the peak and that the obstruction was deliberate. He concludes that Cindermane must have discovered the Tree of Ascension long ago, and has simply been waiting for the fruit to ripen. As he imagines Cindermane and the other beasts converging on the prize, he understands they could ruin everything if they evolve beyond his control. The thought drives him into open frustration as he curses his slipping grip on the situation. Refusing to surrender the opportunity, he unleashes dark power and vows that anyone trying to take Cindermane from him is in for a brutal response. A general orders the regiments to assemble and march for the mountain at once. In a candlelit war room, his cousin confronts him over the ruthless proclamation that has already set the army in motion. The general dismisses the criticism, insisting he has seen the decree, the army is moving immediately, and military command belongs to him, not the clan elders. His cousin turns that claim against him, pointing out the irony that the beasts he drove through the portal first have now become a threat to his own side. He presses harder by warning that the elders will not ignore this failure once they hear of it. The general tries to shut him down, telling him to know his place and leave the army to fix the disaster. But the cousin calmly corrects him and makes it clear the general will not be the one solving anything. He backs that challenge with force, lunging across the table and overpowering the general before he can respond. Pinned in place, the general accuses him of rebelling against the clan and defying the elders' original plan for the incursion. The cousin reveals that the grandfather and elders already know, and that this intervention comes with their approval. Elsewhere, the clan patriarch formally informs subordinates that the elders have reached an accord with the ancestor behind the campaign. To prevent further damage from the general's inexperience, the patriarch records a decree transferring temporary military authority to another commander. Realizing what is happening, the general snatches the document to verify it for himself. As he reads the sealed order, his anger gives way to disbelief. The truth hits him fully when he understands his grandfather truly stripped him of command. His cousin coldly explains that command will be returned only after the crisis is resolved and orders him confined to his room for the clan's safety. The general tears open the decree in fury, but the new commander has already arranged guards and turns his attention to another objective. Leaving the disgraced general behind, the armored cousin departs to retrieve the fruit. That departure is reflected in the eye of a hidden observer who has been watching the exchange. After witnessing the power shift, the cloaked observer decides not to rush blindly and starts thinking through the situation carefully. A system quest confirms the real prize: seize the fruit of ascension when it ripens, with less than 12 hours remaining. He realizes the system deliberately exposed the treasure's location to force rivals into a struggle for supremacy. From that, he concludes the system wants bloodshed, and he imagines the coming battle between all who covet the fruit. Since both demons and the monkey beasts are tied to the same objective, he knows either side will simply yield it. He expects heavy infighting and wonders whether competing for the fruit is worth what will follow. The answer is grim. Going after it looks almost suicidal. Even so, he decides he has no real choice and fixes his resolve on the glowing tree where the fruit will appear. Because the fruit is said to grant immense power, he cannot accept letting it fall into someone else's hands. He commits himself completely, deciding the fruit must become his no matter the bloodshed ahead. With only 12 hours left before ripening, timing becomes as important as strength. He reasons that arriving too early at the tree would only expose him before the real struggle begins. The battlefield is already filling with monsters, confirming that waiting in the open would be fatal. He also knows he lacks the backing of an army, unlike the clan forces already converging on the prize. So he chooses stealth over force, planning to stay hidden, study the contenders, and steal the fruit at the decisive moment. If fortune favors him, he might even kill the newly appointed general in the chaos, though that would leave him hunted afterward. He accepts that the quest is all or nothing, because success could solve not only this crisis but even the larger incursion problem. If he fails, everything becomes harder, yet he moves out through the mountain anyway. He steels himself with a hard smile, deciding failure is not an option. He breaks through the rock face to descend toward the conflict below. Landing in the rain and rubble, he regains his footing with weapon ready. He pauses just long enough to assess what lies ahead. The answer comes immediately as battle erupts nearby, with fighters and beasts already colliding around the mountain. The melee intensifies into a full clash as monstrous enemies surge forward and combat spreads in every direction. From a vantage point beneath the radiant tree, he looks out over the armies gathering for the final struggle over the fruit of ascension.